And welcome to episode 252 of the Spokesman Cycling Podcast. And it's actually the Spokesman Cycling Roundtable Podcast, or a triangular podcast anyway, because I have got two regular guests with me today. And I'm looking at the camera here, but down on my monitor here, I can see them. So I can see David Bernstein and I can see Jim Moss. Hi, guys.
Hi. Hello. How's it going, Carlton?
It's going good. Now, for people who are going to be getting this in the normal way, as in via iTunes, Spotify, however you get your podcasts, and you're getting the audio, then we're doing this with Vision. But we're not doing this with Zoom. We're doing it with a program called Riverside. So it's new to everybody. We've been coming in and out of Vision. It's been a nightmare. So hard to tell the truth, but who cares? We're gonna persevere. We're gonna first of all, we're gonna talk about. Well, we haven't talked together, have we? We haven't talked together for some months, so we haven't talked about the amazingly horrible pandemic and what it's done to our lives. So David, I'll start with you because I can actually see you because Jim's actually disappeared, even though I'm sure he's there. How are you? What are you doing? Have you been at home? Have you been shielding? What's happening?
Yeah. So I think much like everybody else. Well, first of all, knock on wood, we've all been safe and healthy, and nobody here has gotten the dreaded. So we're happy about that, and I know it's been the same for you, despite people in the medical profession in your life. So it's been interesting, but no, I've got my adult kids are back home working from home full time. I'm working from home. My wife is working from home, and as everybody knows, I normally travel. I'm on multiple planes a week. I haven't seen an airplane up close since March the 2nd.
And is that good? Have you enjoyed
that? Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, my business requires, for the most part, that I visit with my clients. And so it's difficult not to be on site with my clients. So I'm doing a lot remotely. I'm doing a lot of webinars and seminars and Zoom calls sitting right here. Not wearing a cycling t-shirt usually, but, during the week. But I'm kind of planted here. Otherwise, I think like the rest of the world, doing more cycling, which has been great. My younger daughter, who some of the Fredcast listeners may remember from years and years ago when we rode across California together, she bought herself a new road bike and she's become a cyclist. So that's cool. And I would say that as far as cycling, I would say my wife and I are in the best cycling shape we've been in years. Wow. So so that's great. And I know that it's been really good for the bike industry, and maybe we'll talk about that. I'm sure Jim may have some comments about that. But overall, we're doing fine. And I think like the rest of the world, looking forward to a vaccine so that we can all go back to our normal lives. But otherwise, all is well.
And Jim, are you in the best cycling shape of your life?
I mean, not like when I was 20 years younger, but getting good. Mountain, not as good. I'm not climbing well this year. But I'm also trying a lot harder stuff now that I think about it. I mean, I did a mountain bike run a couple weeks ago that was like 14 swear words per every 10 foot of distance. So, they brought in concrete caissons to keep the trail from disappearing. The road, I'm happy on the road, and I'm climbing a lot more, which, is something you have to learn how to do in Colorado, or you don't ride at all. Life is good. Gail and I are both healthy. The dogs are demanding more time since we're both here constantly. Mm-hmm. Got one here in the studio, checking for security breaches. But life is good. I mean, I've been working from home for 18 years, so there's nothing new here for me. But it's exciting. I get a little batty, just having no real outside contact, and Zoom is not outside contact, and mostly because I have so many education courses I'm taking, or I'm just listening a lot to conversations where I'm not important. And so I set that on one computer and I keep working on my other. But life is good. I got most of my clients to close their summer camps. I've not had any summer camp disasters, which here in the United States that's gonna be the litigation nightmare. Whenever season closed, of course, that became a monster. You spend $120,000 to go climb a mountain, and then the country closes, and you lose your money. And then the bike industry. The bike industry is just going nuts, to the point that not only can you not find bicycles to sell, but you can't find tires. 26-inch tires. Yeah. 26-inch tires have disappeared. Everybody is bringing everything out of the market. I've got one guy who owns a cycle shop who's driving around Saturdays to garage sales to look for bikes that they can buy and refurbish and sell in their shop. The storerooms of all the shops I visited are empty, or they're filled with bikes that need repaired because there's no more room in the back to store the repaired bikes. So the cycling industry is just in heaven, and you're seeing people everywhere. I mean, it's almost as bad as skiing nowadays on our bike paths. It's I call skiing slalom skiing because you're going around the beginners all the time, and that's what cycling is. At one day last week, I saw 6 African Americans cycling, which is fantastic. I mean, normally in the past, if you saw one a week, it was amazing. And electric bikes are now everywhere. I did a mountain bike ride, and I just had one section going uphill, kick my butt, pop it up 18 inches, and then maneuver the handlebars between 2 trees. And by the time we got done, the bike's laying one place, and I'm laying wrapped around a tree, and I get up and get organized, and 2 older guys than I am came flying through there, and I was like, how did they? And then I noticed they had electric bikes, so I laughed. So.
The problem of not being able to find bikes is one. I mean, the mainstream media has caught on to. I've seen it in a number of major newspapers in the last 2 weeks. I even called my local mobile bike repair guy. Just wanted a couple of tune-ups, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm 6 weeks out."
September, yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. Carlton, how are you guys doing?
We're doing okay. I mean, I'd like to say that I'm doing more cycling than I have been, but I'm not really. I'm doing some cycling, but roughly the same as I was probably doing before. I haven't decreased it and I haven't increased it. But we're all healthy, and there's 5 of us, like you, David. There's now 5 of us. A full house here, including the dog. So that's 6. So we're hearty, hale, and healthy. So we're fine. Thank you.
And
so
if anybody's followed your social media, they know that you've had the opportunity to do something that we haven't. You traveled.
Well, that's a political statement, isn't it? In that you Americans can't go anywhere. I've just seen the CNN map. The CNN map just shows you can't go. So yes, I have, David. Thank you. I have been to Switzerland, where the World Championships are going to be held. In theory, touch wood. There's no wood around here, but touch wood. The World Championship, UCI Road World Championships, will be held in September. So I was able to take a train from my home in Newcastle, and it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and I got to Verbier in Switzerland just before midnight. So it's a long, many connections. But I got there. I didn't have to fly, because flying at the moment, I wouldn't be very uncomfortable. I would be not comfortable with. Train, in the UK at least, and in the Eurostar train, the seats are blocked off. So nobody can sit next to you. You've got your mask on. Yeah, that's obligatory. But nobody can sit anywhere near you, which is bad for the train companies because they can't sell all their tickets. But it's good for the passengers in that all of a sudden you've got first class rail service. You've got as much room as you could possibly want. So I went to Switzerland for that. fantastic 3 days of riding. So I guess I am doing a bit more riding when I get to go to Switzerland.
Right.
But normally, no, I'm not doing as much as I would be. So, well, it's a privilege that we are able to get out, but that might change because our R number is creeping back up again. So we might come back into lockdown completely. So you're right, everybody. The bike industry appears to be booming, and I'm saying appears to be because the stats aren't in. We haven't got all the stats. All we've got so far is anecdotes. And bike shops selling out of stock, as I tell journalists who when they ring me up and ask me these sort of things, I say, look, it's fantastic that appears we're booming, but you actually look at the actual figures of, say, major stores like Halfords, they're not doing that fantastic. They're doing like maybe 1-2% up. It's not like doubling of a market. It's we need to see the figures, is what I'm trying to say. Is we need to find out what has actually happened, because if everybody's sold out of bikes, that's almost that's just because the bike trade isn't very good at the moment. It's been 8-9 years of being in the doldrums, so the bike trade hasn't been ordering bikes for a long time. So we've been going at very low stock levels for a long time, and bike shops no longer stock bikes. All these different factors would say, well, of course we'll sell out of bikes instantly because there's no bikes in shops anyway. So we need to work out, has this actually been a genuine boom? And my book, which is very pleasantly called Bike Boom, wrote that a few years ago. That's sold out. You can't buy that anywhere at the moment. So clearly people have been searching for Bike Boom and actually found this book. But of course, that was in the 1970s Bike Boom, which was a genuine bike boom because that lasted for 4 years. And they were genuinely, they went from, like 7 million in the US per year selling bikes to 14 million bikes per year. So that was a genuine doubling of the market. And I would hazard a guess that we're not actually in that kind of zone with the bike industry at the moment. It's just a lot of it is just artificial in that there's just not that much stock there anyway. Anyway, let's get away from the bike boom and talk about racing is back. David, did you watch it yesterday, the Strada Bianchi? It's not even a classic in many respects. It's quite a new race, but did you watch it and what did you think about it?
I didn't watch it. I was riding. It's very hot here right now, so I got to either ride early in the morning or late in the afternoon. So no, I was out doing a 30-some-odd mile ride yesterday, but it was fun. Here's what was the fun thing. It was fun watching Twitter, and it was as if the cycling fans came out of hibernation. And, spring had arrived and the sun was shining and the clouds had parted and they were finally able to chase after whatever live feeds that they could find before the live feeds got shut down and then they had to go to the next one. But I read accounts of it, and from what I know, it's a I was going to say a bad word. It's a really hard race.
Have you got it on record somewhere, David? Have you got it stored, DVR?
No.
It's a real shame because it was a beautiful race. It was really, really. I mean, scenically. I mean, I can imagine if because I'll just paint a picture here. It's very, very dusty. Obviously, the Strade Road Bianchi White is the white roads of this area near Siena, and it was very, very dusty. So the motorbikes, which were actually kicking up all the dust, the photographers on the back of those will just have some amazing shots of basically riders in pure dust. You can see that from the TV shot. So the print magazines are going to have some amazing shots of this race. Jim, did you watch it? Did you see pictures of it?
No, sorry.
What? This is a cycling podcast, and you're not watching the stuff. Hey guys, let's start having a video again. Let's talk about the races. Did you watch it? No.
You were talking about the photographers having some great shots, and I know Brian, our friend from Velo Images, he's got he had this series. It was like before and after the Peloton. It was like, this is what the guys look like when they go sign in, and then it was, this is what they look like when they finish the race. And I can imagine if he did that yesterday, the photos that he would have taken. And I've seen some of the shots. It looks amazing. But to see, what was it? A large percentage of the Peloton not finishing the race because it's that difficult. And I do know it's a hilly area. I mean, Siena is known as a hill town, so it's just a gorgeous place to ride through. I was interested. See, this is where we've all become public health officials. I was interested from sort of a health perspective. How do you get, because when I'm cycling with my family. But like yesterday, I saw a whole team go by. There were probably 8 of them in a pace line. And of course, this is in the United States where we have these crazy surges. And I thought to myself, well, that considering our new focus on hygiene, I thought, well, that doesn't look safe. And then I start to think about the pro Peloton, and Carlton, we've got a lot of American sports restarting here. Baseball's got problems where they've got several teams who basically have said, well, we can't play because we've had too many positives. Soccer had issues. Thankfully, basketball, knock on wood, because of the way that they've put everybody into this bubble. They're not, but there's no bubbles in professional cycling. And I think Israel, what are they called now? Israel Startup Nation had an issue with a positive test, and so I just get concerned about all these guys in this tight group, breathing heavily, being close together. And I love cycling, but it also, at the moment, I look at it and sort of gives me the willies.
I was riding in the pack, so there's about 8 riders out in Switzerland, and there was this, I don't know what you call it across there in America, the Snot rocket. Would you know what a Snot rocket was? Okay,
we call it that too.
Do you call it that? Okay, so the Snot rocket, and I'm thinking, you should be like 20 miles ahead of me to do a Snot rocket at the moment. That is just not on, but it's just natural for people to do that sort of thing without thinking. He actually did it a few times. That was really annoying. Touch wood, I haven't come down with anything, so he didn't have anything. But those sort of things are going to be coming up in if people going out like with your friends, you can say something. But if you're racing with somebody, you're not going to be able to say anything. So these sort of, you pass bodily fluids when you're riding along at 30 miles an hour. People might not know this, but you pass bodily fluids.
So
disgusting, doesn't it?
To use your term, does the Snot rocket become an offensive tactic where you're in the Peloton and you do that so that maybe you can get a little bit of distance and gain an advantage?
You would definitely gain an advantage. You could do that and then sprint away.
Until they
I don't give people ideas.
Yeah, and it'd be an advantage until they caught you and beat the living crap out of you. So.
Or find you, 100 Swiss francs or something.
Yeah.
So that brings me on to then, do we think the Tour de France is going to go on?
Aha. Wow. He was just right there. Why, Jim?
Because that's all I've been doing now for 3 months is studying this disease. And if you believe that you can run an event and not kill somebody or permanently cause damage to thousands of people, you're an idiot. In Colorado, we found out that if you catch COVID-19 and you are between the ages of 20 and 40, you have a 20% higher chance of having a stroke.
Wow.
Okay. Yes. There's all sorts of these numbers that are coming out on these preliminary studies that haven't been reported yet that I'm, finding all the time. There's another study that shows that it causes permanent damage in most people, not only to their lungs, but to their hearts, their brains, their livers, and their kidneys. The autopsies that they are doing on some of the deceased are showing massive clotting problems throughout their entire bodies. Gail has a new job. She's selling PPE. If anyone needs a truckload of masks or whatever, let me know. and in fact, a couple friends of mine from the cycling industry, of course, own Chinese companies. Just switched them over, and she's going great guns with them. But it's just scary. My sister, this is even scary. My sister runs 29 nursing homes. She's
Wow.
Wow.
had two instances of the disease in her nursing homes. One, they had a medical emergency. They sent the patient to the hospital. The patient at the hospital got the disease, but she was notified by the hospital on the way back, and they were to quarantine that patient, and she survived. My sister immediately locks down the nursing homes. When somebody comes in, a therapist, doctor, employee, their temperature was taken, medical history was checked. They had a therapist come in, medical was okay, temperature was normal at 8 a.m. At 2 p.m., the therapist says, I'm not feeling well. Temperature was 101 and climbing. She had worked with 5 patients. She had talked to 6 people. All 11 got the disease. 2 died. It is not something to play around with.
But is your concern for the peloton, or is your concern for potential
The
spectators?
Yeah, for both. It doesn't matter. Obviously, when I cycle, I breathe hard. In fact, it's now the number one thing on my resume that I do well. And so you're close to the race. You cannot think about it. If you're doing snot rockets when you ride, are you not going to get close to the riders if it's a spectator? The whole concept of bicycle racing is, rear wheel to front wheel. You're breathing whatever the guy is exhaling in front of you, no matter what. One person in the peloton is going to pass it to everybody else. One spectator on the side of the road could pass it to the peloton.
But Jim, they ran a race yesterday, apparently successfully. So might that not be a test? And are you just thinking because it's bigger, the Tour de France, then that's the reason it can't go on?
I think that in 2 or 3 days, we'll find out if that race was successful.
Yeah, true. You don't know now.
And 1. And 2, we may not know. Were there any spectators at that race?
They weren't a huge number. They would definitely stayed away.
So we may not know for ever, maybe, if a spectator got sick from it. You can pass the disease and not have the symptoms. You can carry the virus and not be sick. So we may never know. And the issue is we don't know enough about it to make that decision. We don't know if you're going to live or die. I was talking to a doctor, an ER doc in New York City. He says, one of the things that you're saying, diabetics, and if you're overweight, says one of the things that we're not denouncing, but we're finding out is true, if you're an alcoholic. If you intake too much alcohol, your chances of dying of this disease are greatly increased.
But we have to think, right, that the peloton aren't alcoholics. That they
spectators are.
Yeah, sure.
The Dutch one. No.
Look. I think here's the thing, and it's the same again. Pick a sport. Sport is big business. Sport means billions of pounds, dollars, euros, whatever it is. And I think that if you are, whether you're ASO, the producers of the Tour de France, or you are an owner of an NFL franchise, or you are the manager of a football team, that's football as in soccer, you're watching your business suffer, as so many people are. And these are huge businesses. And my opinion is that that the Tour de France will start. I don't know whether or not the Tour de France will finish. And that's a concern. And what's let's look at it from a cycling fan's perspective. Forget the business for a moment. As we saw yesterday, I told you there was like a reawakening on Twitter, which was cool. Cycling fans are hungry to watch cycling, and we can talk, and I'd love to, about these virtual races. But cycling fans want the Tour de France to happen, and they miss it. I think that I think French cycling fans want to see the Tour de France. And so, yeah, I think it's going to start. I just don't know whether or not it will finish. And I don't know. I don't know. Do either of you know, have they released their protocols for what their plans are for keeping the peloton and the spectators safe?
I haven't seen them.
I haven't seen any. I mean, I'm like registered media, so I've been getting emails. So they have been talking about how journalists can lessen their impact. And of course, they cancelled the Etape.
Right.
You know, which would have been, 50,000 riders coming in from all over the world. So they've cancelled like the major international event where people are coming in from every corner of the world. But I guess they're thinking, well, we can closely monitor from now the riders and the teams, so they're slightly bubbleized, not as much of a bubble as basketball, but they can monitor them. You know, they're testing them a great deal, etc., etc. So I assume that's what they're thinking is we can monitor these guys. We can't monitor 50,000 people coming in, but we can monitor a relatively small number of teams, riders, and support staff. But that begs the question, of course, you can do them, but what about the spectators? You've got no idea how many spectators are going to be and whether they're going to socially distance.
But I think it's going to depend. Sorry, Jim, but I think it's going to depend on what happens, because they're still doing the Dauphiné, the Criterium du Dauphiné, and I think that it depends on what happens there. To me, it's like the Dauphiné is the rehearsal, and it always is, right, for the Tour de France. But this year, I think it's not just for the race itself, but for whatever the safety and protective measures that they're going to put in place for the fans and for the cyclists. And I think that they may learn a lot from the Dauphiné and then apply that eventually to the Tour. Sorry, Jim, I interrupted.
I understand. I just, first of all, I don't even think that the professional sports teams that are bubbling, the new term for not, interacting with anybody, are succeeding at that. I mean, the Marlins in baseball are excellent proof, where they got 21 of their players now tested positive. The basketball players in their bubbles, in their hotels in Orlando, are still getting together at night, and partying and having a good time. There's a trade association here in the United States for camps that created this bubble philosophy. You keep the kids in small groups. It's going to work. All these camps that were financially on the edge said, we're going to open up. We got an example here in Colorado where 3 days after the staff came in, they closed the camp. 50 of the staff members were put up in individual hotel rooms in a hotel for 2 weeks. There's a camp in Georgia just got reported by the CDC. 500 kids in camp, 250 cases of the disease in 1 week. And then we go spread it. And so you get back from camp and grandmother hugs grandson, granddaughter, whatever it is. That's no difference in cycling. We leave the side of the road, where we've cheered. We stood there for 3 hours. You're not going to talk to the person 6 foot away. And when you talk to somebody long enough, do you notice you're getting closer? So one of the things that I've constantly had to think about is I'm always stepping backwards, because the conversations we're coming together, okay, and I'm, okay, step back, step back, step back. I mean, I'm constantly stepping backwards. This is one thing I notice nowadays. So side of the road, it's just going to spread like wildfire. Whether it jumps across the barrier to the peloton or from the peloton back to the spectators, who knows? Now,
so Jim, can I just ask you a different question? Sure. So it's not whether you think it'll go on, whether they're going to put it on. It's, do you think they ought to put it on?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I miss
it. That sounds where you're coming from. You're giving all the negatives, so clearly you think they shouldn't put it on.
Yeah, I miss it. I mean, and there's some theories. One of the big theories that a couple of the lung specialists are looking at is that exercise may keep you from getting the virus. Using your lungs to the maximum capacity, which is the excuse I'm using to go out and put myself at risk, and Gail, is that by cycling, I'm using my lungs. And I have yet to see any cyclists that I know of or people who are serious exercise fanatics get the disease.
Unfortunately, I know an attorney in Salt Lake City who is a very serious runner, and he got the disease in March or I think in April. And actually, he says that I think it was April, and now here we are, August, and he says he's not sure he'll ever be able to do the kind of running and the kind of distance that he used to do. So, so I think I don't want people to think that just because you're cyclists, you're not going to get it. Any of us
and I didn't want to
imply
imply that at all.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
right.
We are not giving out a medical advice here. We're not even giving out bad legal advice. So,
we give out bad cycling advice. So
Follow me if you really want to screw up.
Yeah, Carlton. I'm like Jim. I don't think that I want to see the Tour de France, but I don't think that they should. I want to say that, at least from my perspective, and I think I'm speaking for you guys too. Look, dear listeners, these aren't, from my perspective, these aren't political statements that we're making, and unfortunately, this becomes political on either side. The politicization of a pandemic is just a very strange thing to me. So I just want you to know these are our feelings about sport, and these are our feelings about health, and the health and welfare of the people that we like to follow, those athletes, and also the people like us. We've all stood at those barriers watching races, whether that's in the UK or in Colorado or Utah or France or wherever, or Israel, and you stand at those barriers and you are very close to other people. And these are the kinds of situations in which any kind of an illness can be passed. And when we're talking about a serious illness that can result in death or can have lifelong issues, it's not a political conversation then. It's one about caring for fellow humans.
So one thing. So
yeah,
forget the spectators. If you could have, so it's almost like the soccer thing with football, where you've got stadiums without any spectators in. So if you could organize it, that you had the Tour de France or you have any of these major races, but you had either no or very few spectators. So the question is, I'm rephrasing the question or asking the question again. Yeah. Would you then be happy with the race to be on, or is it still, no, it'll still be bad for the athletes?
It'll still be bad for families. So the bubble's a joke. Okay.
Well. Okay. Wait. Okay. So one NBA player did leave the bubble, and he got, I think they said it was to get his food delivery, and he got put back in quarantine. Knock on wood, the NBA has not had positive tests like baseball has. Baseball's not in a bubble. To your question, Carlton, I don't think I don't think the plan is to put the cyclists in a bubble. The plan is, to put in extra protocols at their hotels and those kinds of things. But they're not putting them in a bubble. As we've seen elsewhere, without a bubble, the possibility goes up, the probability goes up, and seriously, how are you going to keep French fans off the roads? There's not enough gendarmes in France to keep the fans off the roads. So we've got the fan problem, we've got the Peloton problem. So to your question, do I think they should? Do I think from a safety? No, they shouldn't. Even with your hypothetical.
The reason why I get media badges is so I can get closer.
Yeah, right.
Right? I don't want to be on the one side of the fence. I want to be on the inside. I want to see the spokes go by. That's what makes bicycle racing so phenomenal. Crap, if you get 8 people together in Denver and they're riding together, there's 3 people standing on the sidelines cheering. It's a bicycle race, right? You get 4 friends together. There's always a race to the top of the hill.
Or the county sign or whatever.
Right, yeah, exactly. There's always a race. And we know where they are. Pillar to post, Lookout Mountain here in Golden, right? You leave the pillar and you stop the timer at the post. And I'm still trying to get mine so it measures in minutes rather than hours. But it's what we do. It's what puts cycle racing so far ahead of, in my opinion, all the other sports. Because the people can reach out and touch and get in trouble when they do, the cyclists. You can't do, I mean, maybe in LA you can get that close that the sweat falls on you in a basketball game, but not in baseball, not in football. Only in cycling are there's fans right next to the cyclists when they're playing.
This is why I thought, I mean, I went on this trip to Switzerland. I think they're being very optimistic on thinking this race will go ahead. I mean, they showed us all the protocols that are going to be taking place, all the safety measures, all of the barriers that they're going to be putting on where normally there wouldn't be barriers for the spectators on the hill sections, etc., etc. But it really won't take that many people coming down with it before the World Championships to happen for it to collapse the World Championships. So the Tour de France or the Dauphiné, I mean, well, how many riders will it take? 1, 10? Support staff? How many will it take for them to think, right, no more races? And no matter how good Switzerland has prepared, and Switzerland is very, very low. The R number's low. It's actually the best place in the world. Big data has shown that Switzerland is actually the best place in the world. However, if the Tour de France is cancelled, then I can't see that race going on in Switzerland. And no matter how many measures they put in place, and no matter how many or how low the R rate is in Switzerland right now, it's going to be a cascading effect, isn't it? So they were very optimistic to get me and other journalists across there. They want to rescue their tourist season. They want people to come. I just think that is so optimistic to expect these events to carry on. So I'm torn on whether they should carry them on. So I'm not with you, David or Jim, saying they shouldn't carry them on. I am torn on whether they will go on. So when I was invited to the Étape, and many months ago that got cancelled, I put it out of my mind. I was then about 10 days ago, I was invited to the Étape again. I did not think, right, I better get some training in here. I'm going to the Étape. I'm still thinking, no, I don't think the Étape will be on. And lo and behold, what was it, about 4 days ago? They've agreed that it's not going to go on. So yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. But I'd love to, as Jim has said, I'd love to see it happen. I just don't see it's going to happen.
And you have the foresight of having medical knowledge in your household, right? You're getting better information than 99% of the world is when you made that decision. The rest of us are trying to interpret what's going on.
Well, my doctor wife actually was quite worried about me going to Switzerland. And it was only when I was there and you're on the ground and you see all the measures and you see how normal it is in Switzerland. You're wearing a mask on public transport, but restaurants, everything is open. Everything is fine. And there is no massive cases in Switzerland. It's almost back to normal. And they had theirs early. So the guy I was riding with, the guide, he had it. He said 70% of Verbier residents probably had it. And then what they did is they tackled it hard, very, very early, and almost eradicated it. Whereas most other countries, and I'm including US and the UK in this, were far more lackadaisical, didn't stamp on it hard. And we are now suffering the repercussions from that now.
I have a friend in New Zealand who's been sending me and posting things about skiing in New Zealand. New Zealand did the same thing. They stamped on it hard, and the ski resorts are full, and everyone's having a good time. Mm-hmm. Now, they're going to eventually close the ports and close the airports because that's where the disease is coming from.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys a question. I brought it up before, and that is these virtual races. The ones where the pros were doing races on Zwift and things like that. Did you guys watch? Carlton's making a face. Did you guys watch?
No.
No.
Did anybody?
You've got to be hardcore, really, really hardcore to get a kick out of that. No.
Yeah.
The answer is no. And you, David?
No, but listen.
No.
There's people. No, not at all. And I'm not a fan of Zwift. We can talk about that another time. But there are people who watch others play just regular video games. Whether it's Call of Duty or whatever. So it's the same thing, right? It's like watching somebody play a video game, except they're in their basement sweating away, trying to, beat the other guy to the volcano in the Zwift Island or something.
People always ask me why I don't go watching professional sports. I mean, Denver has every professional sports team that there is, and more than any other city in the United States. And I've seen the Broncos once, the Rockies once, and the Nuggets once, and I'm done. Once a decade I go see professional sports. And people ask me, because everyone wears orange and blue or everyone wears whatever. I said, well, it's just like sex. I'd rather participate personally than watch.
There are so many good show titles in this show, Carlton. I don't know how you're going to choose, but okay.
No, I'm just visualizing it. But it's okay because you're in the best shape of your life, so you're fine.
Oh no, it's so bad. It's bad.
On those lines, I mean, we were talking about bikes. You know who has done incredibly well during this pandemic with their bikes? Peloton.
Oh yeah.
They're sold out.
They're completely sold out. Yeah. And I poo-poo that. I say, oh, that's not real cycling. I hook my real bike up to a trainer. But they've done very, very well, and that's it's a little bit like Zwift in some ways, but they've done. Yeah, wouldn't you like to own stock in that company?
They kind of benefited from people ridiculing it, something rotten, a few months before the pandemic started. So it almost like perfect PR for them. It ramped up the awareness of this thing. Pandemic starts, lockdown starts, boom. That's all you can do. It's amazing. Yeah. They couldn't have planned it better. In fact, forget China virus. It's probably Peloton virus. They've clearly manufactured this in a lab.
No, it was manufactured by dogs. Dogs created the virus. Think about all the attention they're getting.
Yeah. All the people who are at home.
Yeah. So,
my dog has never had so many walks in his life.
Oh yeah.
Well, this is just as crazy as demon sperm, isn't it? So come on, this is just as bad.
I saw a study the other day that estimated 60% of all gyms, fitness facilities, will not reopen. Not because they're not going to survive, but because people have switched their training to in-home. And they all bought weights. They all bought whatever they need. You see the new gym that's a mirror. You put it on your wall, and it's like Peloton, but you lift weights with other people.
Yes, I saw that, yes. And on Forbes, in fact. I saw it on Forbes.
Yeah, and that's the next thing that the studies are showing up is who's not going to open after this. How many retail stores? 40% of nonprofits are going to go under. It's going to have a major economic repercussion worldwide that's going to last for decades.
Oh, yeah. This is 20, 30 years of impact we're talking about
honestly, now. I don't care if ASO has a bad year. I care about whether or not my neighbors do.
Yeah.
And in that case, let's not be stupid.
There's your show title. Let's not be stupid.
Yeah. What about the sale of buffs? I got my mask on. Back to riding. Got my mask on.
That's what I do. No, actually, I got one. So I got one of those. Yeah, when I did the... what's the Gran Fondo in Italy? Hang on. The Maratona. No, the Maratona.
Maratona. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
When I did the Maratona, they that's so stupid. I had to look at my jersey on the wall. They gave me a great buff. And yeah, I wear that when I ride. And then if I need to, I just pull it up over my face. It's great. Yeah. And by the way, if it's a cold morning, it keeps your neck warm. It's excellent.
When I was watching the race yesterday, there was a few teams like Trek Segafredo had a team mask, and then lots of the other teams didn't. They were just wearing surgical masks. And you're thinking, these guys are paid to display logos on jerseys, caps, everything. And they haven't done team masks. Are they crazy? You just go to the interview afterwards and you put on your mask and why aren't they having, so all team fans should be sporting their favorite team's masks. So if you're a football fan, if you're a cycling fan, you should be getting your team's mask, and there just doesn't seem to be that many available, and I'm very surprised at that.
Yeah, I agree with you,
David. Talking about commercial things, can you give us an ad break at this point, David?
Absolutely. Well, and it's I mean, to me, it's not even an ad. It's more like a tribute. It's a tribute. Everyone knows that our longtime loyal and devoted, and we really appreciate, sponsor is Jensen USA. And go to jensenusa.com/thespokesman. Whenever you need anything, you can't find things in your local store. Jim said it. And when Jim said that, I immediately went to Jensen USA /the spokesman, and I looked to see what they have. And they've got a good selection of items in stock. If you're looking for tires, you're looking for tubes, if you're looking for components or tools, because your mobile bike repair guy is 6 weeks out, as mine is. I looked, you can find that stuff on Jensen USA right now. They are open. They have free shipping over $60. And I mean, they even complete bikes. So Jim said, for instance, you can't find a complete bike. I looked, just Orbea, Colnago, Rocky Mountain, you name it. The brands, and I say this all the time, an amazing selection, great prices, and unparalleled customer service. What do I mean by that? When you call, on the phone, you're going to get a gear advisor. Now, a gear advisor isn't just some person, in a phone bank. This is somebody like you, like me, who rides. They ride to work, they ride home, or they go on the trails at lunchtime, and they're just like you. And they've ridden the stuff that you're asking about, so they can give you expert advice. So check them out. It's jensenusa.com/the spokesman. And we do ask that you use that URL, because then they know that you heard about them right here on The Spokesman. So we appreciate you supporting them. We really appreciate them supporting us. Make sure you use that URL at Jensen USA. It's jensenusa.com/the spokesman. And now back to you, Carlton.
Thank you, David. And I'm assuming, I haven't checked this, but I'm assuming Jensen USA, that is like many companies, are working remotely. So those gear advisors, I'm assuming, are not going to be in the normal depot. They're going to be at home doing gear advice. Do you know? Yeah. Have you checked this, David? Or does it say on their website? Probably.
I haven't. It doesn't say on their website. It does say that, for instance, they're doing curbside pickup for those of you in Southern California. If you don't want to wait for shipping, you can go and, it's just like when you get your to-go items and they bring it out to your car. But I'm going to guess that you're right. And it's, these days it's easy to work from home.
It is.
And do those.
It's a computer-based business. They need, they can maybe have computers and robots to pick actual product. But the gear advising, that can be done. You could be anywhere and do that, as long as you know your stuff.
Well, that's, and Forbes is looking into this. What's the price of commercial real estate going to respond? I mean, Google said you can work from home until July 1. I bet you Jensen figures out that it costs them $1,000 per whatever fit for a gear advisor in the office, and I can pay them $100 a month more to work at home, and they're happier because they just saved 2 hours in the commute. Well, Southern California, 4 hours in the commute. How many of us are going to ever go back to work?
Yeah, I just checked that the gear advisors are actually working from home, and it even says they'll take your calls from the comfort of their own home, which is great. So it's good to know that they're still there and that they can still help you and that they're home safe and sound with their families and their dogs.
Man, they got a lot of bikes.
I told you.
Yeah, that's sort of amazing. Have you been talking to customer service and heard the dog bark or heard the kid cry in the back? And they get a little embarrassed about it, but that just cracks me up. I think it's wonderful. So
as soon as I hear it, I say, "Oh, you're working from home. How great!"
Yeah.
And then immediately they're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's standard practice now. In that I do now and again, I do media interviews, and yeah, our dog will bark. And before it'd been, oh, are you working from home? Now
Right.
it's, yeah, of course you're working from home.
Yeah.
We're going to keep that in. We're not gonna cut that out.
Right.
We're going to keep that audio in.
Well,
We like the dog.
the expert who was talking about something and his two kids ran in
Oh,
6
yeah.
months ago.
And then his
or
wife.
9 months ago. And then his wife came in. And that made national news. That made Twitter and Facebook. Everyone laughed at it. And now it happens every single day. So
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
true.
that's normal now.
Yeah.
So if we don't agree, I think I would say that's a consensus from your side of the pond. If we agree that we shouldn't be having cycling, we think it should just be cancelled and start again next year, or when there's a vaccine, or
start again when we know transmission, when we understand transmission, and we have that under control. Now, that may mean vaccine. That may mean, well, we're not going to ever get to herd, what's that, herd immunity, whatever. Probably, and I don't think it's going to happen. You know, just because we have a vaccine, it's going to take 6 months to figure out if the vaccine works. I can't wait for a vaccine, but I'm not going to be first in line. I want to see a couple 100,000 people get it and see what they do. You know,
I think that, as much as it pains me to say this, yeah, it should be canceled. And we should wait until the spring and see how it's going. You know, see whether or not we've got a vaccine or any of those other things that we've all talked about. I just don't see. Boy, I hope I'm wrong. You know, I hope that they can have it and that nobody gets sick, but I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think we just need to wait. But, you know, I mean, that's like everything. I've got a calendar over there on the wall that I use for work. And normally it is just full of events that I'm going to. And it's blank. Well, it's not true. There's smudges on it where I had to erase conventions, conferences, speaking engagements. I was supposed to do a 2-day class on something a couple of weeks ago, and I did it sitting right here, looking into that camera. Now, there were 100 people, which was great, but I really prefer to do it live, just like all of these things. So I just don't think it's going to happen.
You know, although there are some things that are exploding because of this. Trade shows are not, but online conferences, registration, a couple that I've been part of, is triple what they normally get. Well, mainly because people are sitting home with nothing to do, so they might as well watch. I also think one of the other things that I've noticed, especially in the cycling industry, is what European companies are no longer here in the U.S. I think we're losing a lot of companies. I mean, not just from the attrition of competitiveness in the cycling industry, but because the communication is just easier to close down an operation than it is to try and keep it open during this period of time. I've been tracking down several companies that seem to have just, and I don't know if that's this or because of lack of Interbike / trade show, that whole thing. And that's a whole another spokesman we can talk about, Sea Otter, trade show, that type of stuff, or other marketing issues or the virus. But several companies have just sort of faded away.
Hey,
Interbike was collapsed anyway, wasn't it? That wasn't going on
It
quite.
it
It wasn't anything to do with coronavirus. Yeah, exactly.
It had already died. It was.
So we're already remodeling our society in many ways, even before the virus. So with David saying he's doing much more remote things, you're probably doing some more remote things previously, yeah?
Yeah. Some, but again, still putting my butt in an airplane seat most of the time and going to see people. It's interesting, you know, there was supposed to be a new outdoor industry trade show that was going to be this summer right here in Salt Lake City. And actually, we know the person who was putting it on because he used to put on Press Camp. And of course, before that, he was at Interbike. But of course, it was postponed until next year as well. But it's funny, Jim, you were talking about European companies, and it reminded me, a friend emailed me recently I think it was a Velo News article about some press release that FSA had put out, and they referred to them as an Italian company, and he emailed me and said, well, when did they become an Italian company? Because I think you were there at the beginning of that company. They have an Italian office, but they're not Italian.
Well, I've just ordered a headset for my giant bike, and it's an FSA. So there you go, David. Yeah.
I have in this drawer, I think I still have the original trademark or copyright of the name.
Well, for people who let's go through that history, David, because a lot of people who've listened to this show before might know. But tell us again about your start in the industry, FSA, even knowing people like Josh Hahn and stuff at school.
Well, Josh, that's a different story. Josh and I met in high school. And if you don't know, Josh is, for those of you who may not know, originally was working with his father at Dahan, the folding bike company, and of course now running Turn, the folding bike company, or the bike company, I think is probably the better way to say it. No, I met Josh in high school. No, my start in the industry was in 1989, when I was working for the parent company of Tioga, the mountain bike and BMX component company. And of course, we owned Shogun, and we also did. It was a Japanese trading company, so we dealt with. At one point, we touched 70% of the Shimano product that moved around the world. So that was a big business. And then from there, I started my own marketing company in the bike business, and one of the brands that I helped start was FSA. So, I love seeing that logo on people's jerseys at the Tour de France, or, on almost every bike out there. You said you're ordering a headset for your Giant, and it's an FSA. I'm not surprised. So yeah, I did a lot of marketing and PR and sales in the bike industry all around the world, and it was a ton of fun. And then I left the bike industry and instead started podcasting. And how long have we been doing this, Carlton? 11, 12
2006. 2006.
14 years.
That's crazy.
In podcast terms, it's a long time. Yeah.
By the way, I still have my advertising program for jerseys. If you want your name to get out there in the cycling industry, send me a jersey, because one, on my back, it's twice the size of all the other cyclists, and two, at my speed, you get to see it for 4 times longer.
I didn't know we had slow motion. We haven't. That's just Jim. On that topic, and that we can't go on forever and ever and ever, even though we haven't talked for a long time, and I'm sure we could go on forever and ever. Let's find out where people can find each other at the moment on social media, which might be a bit different to before. So I'll start with David. David, where can we find you, and what are you doing on social media right now?
So it's funny. I just opened up my phone to see to make sure I had my Instagram name right, which is Fredcast, and that's probably where you can find me. I am an infrequent poster, and when I post, it's usually bikes or dog. Sometimes
you're cycling through an oil painting yesterday.
I was.
It was a gorgeous
ride. Yeah, it was a gorgeous ride. And that picture was taken, as the crow flies, probably 3 miles from my house. It was just beautiful.
And was that filters? Are you boosting some of that, or was that literally you were riding through that?
That's what it looked like. Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Okay.
And then if you look, there were some pictures from last week when I rode to Evanston, Wyoming, which was a lot of fun too. And it's funny because if you look at each of them, you're looking at a gravel road or a dirt road, and of course I'm on my road bike. But sometimes you can't avoid that here. No, so you find me on Instagram. I am Fredcast. And it's funny, I would have to go back to Twitter and see when the last time was I tweeted. It's probably been a couple of years. I just don't tend to tweet. I know.
And you got me into this.
Yeah, you're prolific.
Yeah, you got me into this, so I blame you, definitely.
But while Jim is telling us where we can find him, I'll look up and I'll let you know when the last time was I tweeted.
So, Jim.
Recreation law. I post continuously on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I never go to those sites. I use a service. I post it, it puts the stuff out at the right time. I see Facebook as a never ending black hole of information, of which 30% of it makes me furious, and the other 70% I agree with. So, best way to find me is just to email me at recreation.law@gmail.com or go to my website, recreation-law.com. Not much has
Thank
changed.
you.
Yeah.
And you can email me too. I'm thefredcast@gmail.com. And the last time I tweeted was 125 days ago when we did a lockdown edition of the Spokesmen with Carlton, Donna, Tim, Jim, and Richard Maisner from Cyclicious.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's a good show. 125. That's a long time ago.
Yeah,
I'm talking 125 seconds, probably.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
maybe minutes. Maybe minutes. I'm definitely prolific.
I have a Carlton Reed column on TweetDeck, so you know.
Well, I recommend that to everybody.
Yeah.
Definitely get a column with me. So yeah, I'm as you've kind of like previewed there. I'm definitely prolific on Twitter. I agree with you, Jim, about the black hole that is Facebook. I will post on Facebook. Don't expect an answer. The people send me like stuff on Messenger, and I'll answer it maybe 3 months later when I open Messenger up. People say, "Oh, we're trying to reach you urgently," and it's like, "Are you still trying to reach me urgently?" When 8 months ago. So Twitter at Carlton Reed is where I'm definitely at. Instagram, is dogs, and of course Forbes. So Forbes.com is where you'll absolutely find me at the moment. So this has been fun, guys. Not in mushroom terms of fun guy, but in just getting back together and talking to you and seeing you sometimes when the system didn't collapse